Hi, Jeffrey Scott here, the Ultimate Landscape CEO podcast. This is special today. We have a recorded live stream event where I'm being interviewed by Kelly Dowell. We're focusing on how to convert design build into maintenance, and we're going to cover all the different aspects, what gets in the way of that, best practices to do that. Also, if you have a small maintenance department and you're trying to scale it up, we get into that as well. So really, any item around that process we are covering here in this very awesome live stream. Here we go.
We have a really important topic ahead of us, converting our design build projects into ongoing maintenance customers. We do have a really jam-packed agenda. I'm super excited about this. We came up with, 20 questions or so to ask you about this topic. Again, the topic is converting those projects, it's design build projects, outdoor living projects into full service maintenance customers. So how can we take a one-time thing and turn it into recurring revenue? We started this, I got this question a lot from some of my clients. And you are a great consultant in the industry, so I brought it to your attention. And as we did some homework, we realized that this isn't written about anywhere, that we just couldn't find much information on it. So we did want to, let's bring some information on it. I think it's really important. So what do you think? Why is this topic important to you, Jeffrey?
It's so important when I ran and owned my own landscape business, but let me just talk about why it's important for the industry. I have a brand new client, $40 million client. And late in their journey, they figured out, we need recurring maintenance. And they grew the install so quickly. Now they are playing catch up, and a lot of people are selling their businesses now, et cetera. And it's the recurring maintenance, which is the value and provides the stability of the business. So there's this whole long-term trend. When it's a weaker market, people, economically, like if there's a dip, people think, glad we have maintenance, or gosh, we really need to sell more maintenance. And so I think it's important for all those reasons. But also, if you're photographing your work and you want it to look good in year 3, because it takes 3 years for a landscape to root and bloom, if you're not maintaining it, then it's going to look terrible. So there's just so many reasons why this is an important topic.
Yes, I have been on the judging panel for NALP's awards every year for, 5, 6, 7 years now. And one of the projects that we like a lot are the ones that show us like 4 seasons. So you get 4 seasons of interest. So we have like your spring annuals versus the fall annuals are included in photos. We like the before and afters, but also there's something to be said about before, after, and then 3 years after when the plants have matured and they've grown. And so, if you want to get those good photos, someone's got to be maintaining it and doing it well.
NALP used to do a 10-year award. Do they still do that?
A decade award. They do. Yep.
Yeah. So if you're not maintaining that property for a decade, you cannot enter that award, but in any event.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, well, let's just jump right in here. So let's talk about one of the challenges that come up, because it's important to know, like, if this was easy, everybody would just do it. Maybe they'd include it in a package or something like that. But why do companies struggle with this? Why is it so hard for us to just sell maintenance with design build?
So I'll give you 3. One, I'm going to go back to my new $40 million client. The owner is enamored with install, bid build, or design build. That's how they cut their teeth. And they just don't think about maintenance, or they haven't invested within their company to grow maintenance. And so some of it is just self-inflicted, right? That's one big obstacle. You got to look in the mirror there. The other obstacle is that their best salespeople are really hunting for whales, and they're looking for the next sale. And so they've got the wrong salespeople working on the the conversion. And even if they have decent salespeople in maintenance, they just don't have a good sales process focused on it. So let's call it purpose of owner and business. let's call it the type of salespeople we have in the company, and then sales process.
Yeah. And from the client's perspective, though, like why would they opt out of purchasing maintenance, or what would be a barrier for them?
Well, there's really a few, right? One, the most common is going to be, I already have somebody taking care of my property. So they have a current provider. We'll get to if their current provider is good or not.
Yeah.
The other reason they might opt out is they think it's expensive. I always did mow and blow. I've now built a bigger project, but I never thought about bigger maintenance. Another obstacle is the salesperson or designer implied it was maintenance free, right? There's kind of this trend that properties are maintenance free. So that's a self-inflicted, the client may have asked for low maintenance. Okay. But low maintenance is never zero. And a property never looks as good in year one as it will in year three. So those are some of the main obstacles I think that come from the client.
Yeah. Cool. So, does this apply? I mean, does this apply for commercial businesses as well as for residential, or which do you think has it harder?
Well, the residential definitely has it harder. The commercial knows. I mean, they just know it's in their budget. They're doing maintenance. It's definitely an issue with residential. And I think the way to overcome the client's perspective, and I'm just going to lay it out here early, is I think the company has to do three things to overcome these obstacles. They've got to sell the need to the client, right? The client has to understand why they need a comprehensive or a professional maintenance service. So the need has to get sold. The vision has to get sold. Here's how it looks in year one, but here's my goal for your property in year 2, year 3, year 5. And so that vision the client has to understand what you're really trying to create here, and that maintenance is going to help finish the creation, if you will, of the project. And then lastly, they have to sell the maintenance team. I think what I'm giving you really here up front is the magic sauce. I believe instead of saying, oh, you're going to love our program, no, I think you should be saying you're going to love Jacob or Susan, who runs our program. Wait till you meet them. They are really going to take what we've started creating here, what we've built the foundation of, and they're really going to bring it to its flourish. You're going to bring it not to its completion, but they're going to help your property flourish. You're going to love their care of your property. You're going to love the attention they give you. So let me just summarize. I think where companies make a mistake or where they miss out is they don't sell the need. You can't just assume it. They don't do a good enough job selling the vision of what's trying to be created, and then they don't sell the team. They might sell the product or the service, but they really need to sell the team.
Yeah. So, okay, this is kind of tough because you're talking about selling the vision, but a lot of people are looking for, I want low maintenance landscape design. I want something that's so low maintenance. So the salesperson, as you kind of alluded to this, is selling them something that's low maintenance. So you're kind of setting your maintenance salesperson, maybe you're not setting them up in the best way to let them know that there is, all landscapes require maintenance. We in the industry, we know this, plants need water, they need care. But how can you set them up for success and still call it low maintenance? So how can you get in the customer's mind that low maintenance still means maintenance?
That's a very specific question. To me, you have two silos going on there. And so the company has to have a vision for what it's selling. Is the company selling low maintenance or fuller maintenance? So I think there's a corporate marketing decision. And then the sales teams have to get together and and make sure they're giving the same messaging. Now, there may be every now and then a low maintenance project. Okay, whatever that means. Does it actually mean gravel instead of lawn, or whatever it actually means? Always room for exceptions. But if it's a recurring problem, then corporately they're not on the same page, and the sales management on both divisions are not on the same page.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about structuring those maintenance offerings. I've heard this before, and I don't know if it's an outdated technique or if it's still in play, but do you know companies that are like requiring maintenance as they sell a design build project, or should you require maintenance?
So this is a great question. I am okay with tying warranty to full maintenance. And this is something I experimented with years ago, but back when really no one was doing it. But I'm seeing it more and more now, where people are saying, we will extend the warranty if you are a comprehensive maintenance client. Some will even go to say there is no warranty if you're not a maintenance client. Okay. Now, I think you can get away with that in certain markets, and others you can't. The whole idea of no warranty, and put that aside for a second because I think that's more situational. But I definitely like this idea of extending the warranty with comprehensive maintenance. And you, the listener, have to decide what that means. Does comprehensive mean, lawn care, irrigation, mowing, like some base services? You have to decide, is it a base set of services or is it actually comprehensive? So I like that a lot. There's really no other way to require a year of maintenance, but that's a way to incentivize it.
Could you require it by including it in the price?
Oh, okay. So here we go. This is the big question. If I'm selling a design build project and I have to include maintenance, I'm going to downplay it. I'm going to suppress compress the costs, and I'm not going to want to do that if it's a large maintenance. If it's really small, comparatively speaking, maybe. But I also think many clients, they're not thinking about that. They're thinking right now about the design build side. So I don't think I'm sure there's exceptions. Someone's going to text in and say, no, we do this. But I don't think it's an advantage to forcing the sale up front. I think you have to sell it conceptually up front 1,000%. But I don't think it should be included in the package. Now, I know in commercial, some are forced to do that. Okay. If everyone's doing the same thing and it's equal spec, apples to apples, but residentially, I wouldn't do that.
Yeah. So how can we sell it, like conceptually? How can we start planting the seed for maintenance as salespeople during the design build project?
So let me ask that, but let me just sort of give my own add-on question. So who should sell maintenance, right? Should the designer, the salesperson, the DB salesperson sell maintenance? I think that's a problem, because the sale is a relational sale, and really the designer, design build person doesn't, depending on how you set up your company, you don't want that relationship sticking to you. You want it to stick to the account manager, right?
Right.
Or to the maintenance department. But if you're the one putting together the bid and presenting it, you've kind of cut the legs out from the maintenance person. And so it may solve problems having the DB salesperson sell it, but I think it creates longer term problems that you really want to avoid. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. But what about if you're a smaller company and you don't have that luxury?
Well, so then you're selling both. Some small companies, some companies start off where the design salesperson is the account manager.
Sure.
The problem is that person caps out after a while, and then you have to recreate a unicorn, somebody who can do both. That's harder to recreate. So you might start off when you're smaller doing that, but I think you're going to have to make that shift.
Yeah. Yeah.
What was your question 2 minutes ago?
The question 2 minutes ago was, how can we start to plant the seed for selling maintenance, assuming that, the two salespeople are two different people?
Well, it should be on the website, right? It can't be a design build website or design only website.
Okay.
So I should be able to see it on the website. Paul Friend, you know Paul, right?
Paul's a good client of mine. We love Paul at Sun Valley.
You love Paul. Okay. There you go. And so landscapes for life, right?
Yep.
The guy repeats that so often. Good job, Paul, that we all remember it. Landscapes for life implies maintenance. So either on your website, you're talking about design, build, and maintenance, or you're conceptually talking about landscapes for life. So it should start there. It should start in the sales process up front. We do all this, whatever I create, we can maintain for you. And even if the client says, well, no, I have my own maintenance company. Well, I understand, but we're, as a salesperson, I'd be saying, but we're going to design it so that it will work through the maintenance phase. And I think even if a client has their own maintenance company, they're going to be willing to let you take care of the portion that you built, especially if it's connected to warranty.
Yeah.
So I think that's the way in, where you say, that's fine. We'll just take care of this section. And let me make it simple. You're building the backyard. We'll take care of the backyard for that first year to keep the warranty going. And you have your person continue with the front yard. That's an easier sale. And if the whole point there is if they say no right up front, you've got a longer sales process. Instead of selling them immediately, now you have to think about it as an extended 12-month sale or 24-month sale. And if you can get in to maintain part of the property, then they can see the difference. And if you are that much better, you will earn the rest of their business.
Yeah. So that kind of brings us to the point of when do you quote this? Are you giving them all this information up front? Like, hey, we're going to warranty it, or there's an extended warranty at the same time that you quote the project? Or is it, do you do it later after the project's completed? Oh, by the way, here's the cost for maintenance.
These are all good questions. And I'm also, you asked, or we talked about if the design build person should include it in the price.
Yeah.
And some people will include a year of maintenance. And I know in commercial, like sometimes you have to do that, but I think that's weak. What it looks, it looks convenient, looks like it works easily, but I think it's weak because you're avoiding the sale. If you include a year of maintenance, you still have to go sell it. You've just pushed out the sales, the moment of selling out a year. And, and I think that's weak. So I don't think you should include the price. It also hurts your margins. It makes it a loss leader. All kinds of negative reasons for including it in the price. I'd rather to maximize the margin on design build and then maximize the margin in maintenance. And I'd rather teach the salespeople in maintenance how to sell and confront that challenge head on versus, we'll just slip it in because we've had trouble selling. Like, I think it's a weak solution. Okay, I know I've ignored your question, Ann. Come back with your question.
What is that? What am I questioning?
You were asking me, what were you asking me?
I don't know. I don't know. I think that was a good answer. I was going to ask you if we're not pushing it off, if we're going to just hit it right now, how important is it to tailor like a custom maintenance plan versus just giving somebody, I don't know, here's the basics, like here's mowing or here's plant healthcare,
Yeah. Well, that really depends on how the company sets up their packages. Some companies start with the base and they want to do the upsells because there's higher margins and enhancements. Some companies, and they keep it that way. Some companies start with the base and then in year 2, they include the enhancements the clients want into the base. right? And so over a 2, 3, 4 year period, the base grows. Other companies just have a more comprehensive approach and will sell that up front. I think you should always have enhancements. Enhancements is where you make up the margin with that client so that the average year end margin is higher and high enough for it all to make sense. And so I think the ultimate answer to your question is it depends a bit on what kind of company are we talking about, right? There's mow and blow, there's mowing only, right? There's companies that just do 2 services and 3 services and that's it. And then there's much more comprehensive companies. And so I don't want to give a blanket answer. I think we have to look at the company to make that decision.
Yeah. So do you see most companies being successful having if they can afford or if it makes sense to do it this way, that they have somebody who's selling design build projects and then somebody who's selling maintenance, but who sells those enhancements? Where does that fall into play? So
you definitely need different salespeople, design, build, and maintenance. And at some point, I want you to ask me about if you've sucked at this, how do we prime the pump? So we'll get there.
Yeah, we'll get there.
Who sells enhancements? I'd say it's 6 of one, half dozen of another. I would say in half the companies out there, or maybe in most, 2/3, it's the account manager selling the enhancements, right? When they may be supported by a designer, but the account manager pays for their position by selling enhancements and bringing the beauty of the property up and the margin of the client up. And so I would say that's half to 2/3. It's probably the norm. And then there's a big minority of companies out there, also in commercial, where the enhancement salesperson is a different person with their own separate crews, and the account manager invites them in to make the sale. To me, that's I think you'd only do that if logistically it made more sense for your company, and we'd have to dive into why that would be. But that's the minority. But I see it more and more. So it's a growing minority.
All right, Jeffrey, we're going to take a quick little commercial break here to hit up these comments. I have some questions down here.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, you ready for this? So we have a question. I think that robotic mowers are a great way to extend your design build company into maintenance, but I haven't seen this in many U.S. companies. Why not? Do you have an opinion on that? That's from Angelique Robb at Synced Magazine. Synced Live events, if you guys haven't been.
So, no. A lot of people are doing robotic mowers. 100%. If you didn't do any maintenance and you're like, how do we start maintenance? Mowing's a whole different animal than garden maintenance. I'm in New Orleans. The maintenance contractors here are terrible. My good friend Chase Mullen, who built my front of my landscape, but he does commercial maintenance. I'm like, Chase, can you give me someone who does good residential maintenance? And so literally when we're all done here, I have an appointment, the guy's showing up, and I'm not going to talk to him about my mowing. I mean, that's the easy part, and I could get anybody to mow, but it's taking care of my whole landscape and the pruning, etc. So back to is robotic mowing a way to start up a maintenance division? No, I don't think so. But in a couple of years, maybe it'll become the easy way to do it as that all develops. But that's only a portion of what your client wants.
Yeah. Okay. When presenting design build lead, or have the maintenance account manager be introduced towards the tail end of the installation. So I guess I don't understand this question. When presenting design build lead, or have the maintenance account manager be introduced towards the tail end of install. I think this is what you and I were talking about last week or so, where we have the baton and we're handing off the baton.
If it's a long project, I think the account manager should be introduced in the middle. If it's a bigger project, I'd have my account manager, I'd invite him into a meeting with the client. I'd almost make up a reason for him to be there or her to be there. And I'd give them something, or I'd save something smart for them to say, where they can come out and say, listen, I've noticed the trees, we're protecting the trees, and here's what we're going to do as we finish out the project to make sure we're taking care of your property. So I would make up or have a reason for them to come in, add value, be smart. And like I said early on, you've got to sell the person. So let's call the account manager Jane. I've invited Jane out to come to our meeting next week. You're going to love Jane. She's smart. She's well trained. She's got more pedigree than anyone in our company. And you're really going to enjoy working with her. And she's got some important things she wants to talk to us about the trees. Ooh, I can't wait to meet Jane, right? We didn't talk about mowing or selling you anything. We talked about a person with expertise. And so I think you've got to sell the person, just like, little sidebar here, just like when you're setting up an appointment for a designer to come out to your property and you're the person on the phone, if you do it by phone, you're talking up that person, whether they're the owner or a separate designer. You're going to love Fred. Fred's won awards. He's been with us, 2 years or 20 years, and we're lucky to have him. And you're really going to love this person. So selling the person and building anticipation, I think, is a great, important step in the sales process. And so back to your question, Jane, the account manager, I would have that person out as early as you can on a larger project. If it's a short project, man, you better have that thing well timed because, for the obvious reasons. So you can't bring them out necessarily early, but you better have it orchestrated up front so the client isn't on vacation. I had to go to New York for work. You need to really make sure that they know the need to meet Jane and talk to her about what you have. And it could be, maintenance or warranty is tied to it. You'd have to come up with, depending on your strategy and how you make it important. But on really short projects, it has to be well timed.
Yeah. So, we're a marketing company. What we like to do a lot of the times is put together like employee bios. So that way, when somebody schedules their appointment, we're sending them, hey, Jane's coming out, meet her. This is what she looks like. So you know ahead of time what you're getting yourself into. So I think that could be applied in the same way, with the next account manager or the next salesperson that's coming in. So we've got multiple questions here about when, and we're talking about when do you sell this? And I think we've hit on this multiple times. I don't know if we're looking for an exact when do you quote it answer, but I think, you've hit this.
Quote it as soon as the maintenance crews can get on site.
Yeah.
Now, sometimes in a larger project, you've got to come on site and maintain something, right? So sometimes you have to dribble the maintenance in. We're going to come in now and deep feed your trees or, whatever it might be. Or we're going to come in now and take care of the front while they're finishing out the back. So you might have to be flexible and pivot, but there should be zero gap in that handoff. It's like the baton race, right? You're handing the baton to the person in front of you and you're both holding it for a second or two.
Yeah.
And that baton can be dropped.
Yeah.
So can I go back to, you haven't asked a question, so I'm going to jump to the question. What happens if you suck at this and you got to kickstart it in your company? How do you do it? And so I'm a fan of of this term called mini games. We know it from the great game of business, right? So you create a mini game. I think for the first year, you create a mini game where you track every single client conversion. Like you'll have a war room with a board and there's the name and does it get a smiley face or a red X? And I think of it as hand-to-hand combat. I also think you can give mini incentives. So you might double the incentive, triple the incentive, quadruple the incentive that the designer gets or the project manager gets or the maintenance person gets. And you let them know, for this year, we're gonna have some fun, or for this quarter, for the next 3 months, I'm quadrupling, and I'm just making this up, I'm quadrupling the incentive for every client you sell, and I want to go sell 100% of clients that we want to service, right? Maintenance can't travel as far as design build, so you got to, You have to know who you want to sell. And that's a whole separate debate right there. But I think you turn it into a mini game, you put money behind it. By the way, a project manager, if you have one in your company, can be a big sales promoter in this process. So let's say it's a big enough project where there's a project manager. The project manager can now talk up the maintenance person. Oh, wait till you meet Jane. She's the best. And honestly, I think clients like to be sold sometimes by technicians and not suave salespeople. So when the project manager is talking up Jane, the account manager, the client's gonna believe him.
Yeah.
And they'll talk at a different level too. So everybody can be in on this game. And I think you gotta make it the priority of that season for the company.
Yeah. So a lot of design build companies are great at what they do. They're excellent at what they do because they have specialized in what it is that they do, which is design build. They do really good projects. Maybe they're just dabbling into maintenance. Or maybe they just really don't have a strong maintenance division. They may not want to admit that, but their maintenance is weak. Design build is strong. Maintenance is weak. I mean, how do we get that ball moving? I mean, you want to talk your people up, but what if you don't have faith?
Not only do I have thoughts on this, I've experienced this.
Okay.
In my own company, where there's a lack of faith from one side to the other. It's the real deal. Salespeople, designers, salespeople will not sell if they don't believe in the team. And I just said you should sell the team, not the product, right?
Right.
So you cannot afford that. Hands down, it will kill. I don't care how much money you put in front of your incentive you put in front of your salesperson. They don't believe who they're going to hand it off to. They're not going to hand it off. It's like a realtor. One little sidebar here, but what I found about realtors is, yes, you can give them incentives to promote you to their new client, but what they really want is for you not to mess up their reputation. Like, that's what motivates a realtor. They're only going to refer you if they believe. Yes, you can bribe them, but they're really only going to want to refer you if you don't mess up their reputation and their sale.
Yeah.
And I think an internal salesperson, thinks that way, and they should. And so you got to have the right team. So if you're trying to kickstart a whole division, I always tell my clients, if you're going to do something, let's grow it to at least $1 million.
Okay.
Because then it's a real division, a real company. Now, if you're 40 million, you're laughing at what I just said. If you're $500,000, you're like, what? My whole new division should be $1 million. I think when you get to $1 million in a division, you can have a mini leadership structure in place. You can scale the thing. There's enough revenue to pay for it. So, if you're 3 million or 5 million or 10 million, and you're going to start up maintenance, we're growing this thing to $1 million. Okay, what do we need? Well, if it's going to be $1 million, now we can afford a good leader of that, or a good salesperson, or a good account manager. So you have to invest forward ahead of the revenue to build that team.
Do you think that they should be able to use, you talked about doing mini games, but using incentives, can that go both ways? Like the maintenance team has the same incentives, the design build?
What do you mean?
Well, you said, do a mini game, have a war zone, if you will, and put the smileys and the red X's. So
yeah, war room.
That kind of gives one side of the team who may not have faith in the other side of the team a incentive, but maybe not the other team. So I guess I'm just trying to, in my mind, how to remediate that and build more trust and camaraderie versus that divide.
So a mini game is we're going to change a set of habits here and behaviors. Maintenance should be referring design build. And in fact, we always drew the circle, design to build, and build feeds maintenance. Maintenance should feed design build. And there's always a debate. Well, what do we hand off versus what's an enhancement versus design build?
Yeah.
And within a company, even that definition will change every year or two. It just is going to change. Don't fret about it. Just set the definition and know to yourself, it's probably going to change depending on multiple factors. So I don't know that you can create a mini game around that because you can't force every client to buy design build. I do think it is a long-term training that maintenance has to sell design build, and maintenance, or I'm sorry, they're not selling design build projects. They're selling that the department, or they're finding the need and selling the need so the department comes in and can talk to the client about design build. One thing you can do is have designers walk properties with the account manager. And that designer walking the property with the account manager can both identify, hey, I just saw 5 things you can sell the client. You can sell them that. But really, if I look at the property, I could sell them redoing this whole backyard here, that the account manager is never going to see. So I think your best salesperson with the biggest vision, this is going to sound a little bit counterintuitive or sort of a tension. But if you could free them up to walk properties and educate account managers and expand the account manager's vision on what they could sell, it would really be to the benefit of the client, the account manager, and the company.
Yeah. I know we've got some feedback here. That's the great debate, the enhancement and design build definition and solving that. And I think it really comes down to people too. You might have somebody who can do design build projects selling enhancements. So
it's going to depend on so many factors, like where does the skill level reside to plant trees, do small projects, do masonry. And so a lot depends on your company and the skill levels. And it's going to change every couple of years. So just do the definition for the year, see if it works. There is always exceptions. It's one of those things that will always be debated, and things will sort of change as your company changes.
Yeah. Cool. We've got a couple other questions here. Outside of closing existing design build clients, what marketing methods have worked for maintenance clients through your experience with your customers?
Yeah. It's harder to market for maintenance than design build. And let's have a little conversation here. Do you agree with me, Kelly? And why do you think that is? I think it's because a design build project's a thing, and it's easier to sell things than services. A design build project is sexy and visually interesting, and that's easier to sell. If I want to redo my property, I'm going to do more research. I might do research to get a good maintenance company. As I told you, in New Orleans, there's some crazy people here, but there's not great. The properties are so small.
Yeah.
There's just not great maintenance companies. So it's easier for me to find a design build company. Even Chase Mullen does residential design build, does it great. So my experience is it is harder to market for maintenance. Not impossible, especially if that's your reputation, right? If your reputation is design build, it's a lot harder. If you built your whole company on maintenance, then you've got the reputation behind it, and then just good name recognition, marketing and pay-per-click and trucks and everything supports your growth. But if you're trying to start a new thing, it is just harder that way. It's not impossible, but harder. What's your experience?
Yeah, I think I would agree with you. Design build is definitely a sexier thing, especially if you're doing it right and you're going out there and you're getting the before photos, you're getting the during, and you're showing this elaborate, great, awesome thing that you've done afterwards. That's a lot easier sell than here's the grass that we mowed, or maybe it even takes 2 or 3 years to get turf to look better through lawn renovations and stuff. And it's like, that's just not as glamorous. But I think also it's a lot of the marketing and stuff that we do is just heightening awareness to the clients that you already have. because 9 times out of 10, they're not taking every single one of your services that you offer, whether that is design build or whether that is any of your maintenance services. So how many of your clients are on your tree and shrub program who also do mowing and fert and, your bed maintenance? Probably not all of them. So it's kind of that bringing awareness and that repetition over and over of here are the services that we have for the maintenance.
But could we talk about that a little bit? So
Let's do it.
If your client gets a first impression of you as design build, it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard to change their mind on what you do. One of the best solutions to that I've seen is Russell Landscape, where I held really my first summer growth summit. We didn't call it that back then, but that was my first summit, if you will. And when they bring on a new maintenance client, they do a dog and pony show where all the service heads assess the property and come with their recommendations in the first 30 days. And it helps cement in the client's mind, oh, you guys don't just mow and blow, but you've got the pots division, the irrigation division, I'm making this up, the lighting division, I'm not sure they have that, but, the pest control division. And so you then get the client really clear up front. Your enhancements go up in that first year a lot, and the property makes a big, quick turnaround in how it looks. And so anybody watching the property will say, oh my God, what did you just do? Because your property just changed. That's beautiful. Oh yeah, we hired Russell. So I think that whole onboarding of a new maintenance client is often is given short shrift. You sell maintenance, they should learn in the first month or two everything you do in maintenance. You can't just assume, oh, we'll upsell them later, because it gets harder as the further down you go. So I always thought that was brilliant.
Yeah. I think it's interesting what you said, though, about if the client's first impression of you is this, and you're trying to change it to maybe that. I mean, that could go from, I have clients who come to me and they're like, we're mostly commercial or we're mostly residential and we want to get into the other one. How do we do that? And it's like, well, if people's impression of you is that, sometimes that can be hard to break. But as a consultant, is that something that you even want to change at times? This is kind of getting off, but I think if you're good at something that you're great at, right? If you're really, really good at the commercial space, do you want to get into residential landscaping?
Well, that's a valid question, but let's just go a little micro. So my point was, I hired you for maintenance, but I didn't know that you did these 6 maintenance services already. I only thought you did this one service. I guarantee everyone listening here, guarantee it, I'm going to put $100 down. You've been in business for a couple of years or more. There's a competitor on one of your properties doing some service because your client didn't know that you do that.
Yep.
I guarantee it. I got $100.
Yep.
It's happening to everybody listening here. And that's because you didn't educate the client up front to what you're already doing. Now, your question was, should you really go into residential if you're commercial? It's a great point. In many ways, you're right. And in some ways, you're not. But, we could talk about both. I mean, Mall Landscape, he's local. He does residential design build. Beautiful projects. Love it. And it's a commercial maintenance company.
Yep.
But he's not a residential maintenance company. Hard for him to do both. It is hard to do both unless they're almost kind of run as separate companies. And so, in general, I think people look at diversification as the way to grow, and sometimes it's the way to not grow fast.
Yeah.
Sometimes you slow down when you diversify.
So would you think it's beneficial to get feedback in that way? So when you're done with your design build project, I don't know, if you're done with your design build project and you get a 7 out of 10 on your NPS score. Do you find that your clients are actually sending out feedback surveys? Are they finding out how they did with their customers?
So I think there's 4 ways to get feedback. Way number 1 is, are they paying promptly? When you're doing an install project, you should be on top of every payment. And if a client slows down any portion, there's a problem, probably with your work. So prompt payment, and in fact, immediate payment, not 2 weeks. We give you terms of 2 weeks. No, we get paid on receipt of the invoice, because you need to know if they're happy. And so payment is the most important way. And therefore you really should not give your clients terms on bigger projects. The foreman asking for a review, 5-star review. Now, sometimes the client will do it because they like the foreman.
Yeah.
But it's a way to find out how we're doing by asking the client to commit to a 5-star review. You do have the NPS surveys, right? The Net Promoter Score. I think that's probably handled more corporately, but that's a way to do it. And then lastly, on larger clients, I would do a walkthrough. And sometimes you need a higher up person in that walkthrough. So, if I owned a design build company and it was running well without me, I would still go do a walkthrough on a few projects a year where I'd have the client tell me about their entire experience, right? Sometimes they don't want to tell the salesperson, or, they just want to get the project done. So there's different ways to do walkthroughs, and I used to do them that way. And then in maintenance, you can do kind of walkthrough. So there's walkthrough on the property, then there's walkthrough on how are we doing. And those are 2 very distinct types of walkthroughs. When I do focus groups for clients, and I used to do them a lot, and I don't really do them much anymore, but what I found is the contractor's used to talking to the client about the project, but not about how are we doing. And so that's where a focus group can really help a client learn about how do they do in terms of process and satisfying the client that way.
Yeah. Cool. We've got a couple questions in here I want to make sure that we get to. Follow-up question on Russell Landscape's Dog and Pony Show. Do they just send everybody out there all at once, or do they set up multiple in-person meetings, or how does that actually work in real life?
I believe it works as follows, that we've taken on a new client and we have a kickoff meeting with that client and people show up. So it's all together. Okay. We say, you know what, why don't we meet in a month from now, or whatever it is, a couple weeks, a week, whatever. And we're going to assess your property and come back to you with feedback as a group. And then after that, you can break off into individual meetings, but you have to assume the client's super busy. And so you better have it orchestrated up front.
Sounds like an intervention.
It sounds like when you're taking over someone else's maintenance account, it is an intervention.
All right. Arden, our girl Arden wants to know, is there a dollar value where an enhancement gets handed off to the design build? Is there a hard rule on this?
No. I mean, it's no, because there's so many levels of dollar values for projects for companies, right? Like some companies do $5,000 jobs, some do 50, some do 500, some do 5 million. So dollar value depends on your company, but then it also depends on your skill set. But it is a good question, because should you set the cutoff as a dollar value or a product type? Mm-hmm. And that's where I find that companies just kind of change it every couple of years, because it never quite works, or it works and then it stopped working. Some will just do it on dollar values, and it's somewhat arbitrary, 5,000, 10,000, 20,000. Others will do, you do the softscape up to 10,000, but hardscape, anything over 2,000 we'll take and design build. Again, I'm just making up those numbers. but it could easily be a hybrid of the two.
Yeah. One of the things we started talking about at the very beginning of this live stream, so I don't know if everybody was on at that point, but we did talk about the NALP has a Decade Award, which is a really cool award that is kind of prestigious that you win if you did the design build on a project and then you maintained that site for 10 years, a decade. And so that is an award that you could use to show clients in your marketing efforts that we are, yes, a design build company, but we also thrive in maintenance. I think that would be a huge way to highlight the long-term benefits of your care, because you can just see that year after year after year, the plants maturing, the trees growing, the 10-year difference, I think is just a great way to showcase the work that you've done. Do you have any other strategies in mind that you would think are effective ways to showcase like long-term benefits of maintaining the property that you put in?
I think in the sales process, you can take prospects to come visit your comprehensive clients. And so they can not only see the work you did, but the benefit of keeping the company on for maintenance. And so I think that's a great way to get clients and prospects talking to each other. I also think you could get your properties on garden tours, right? A lot of garden tours are big deals. There's for homes and for gardens, right? So there's house tours and garden tours. You could create your own if there's not one in your area, where you invite clients and prospects and maybe a local garden club to 2 or 3 of your properties, and maybe you even sell tickets and you give that money to a nonprofit, a charity, right? But by selling tickets, people will show up. And so I like that. And of course, videos, right? Whether it's testimonials or time lapse might be interesting if you had a 3-year time lapse, or just other kinds of videos, right? There's all kinds of videos these days. So those are a couple ideas.
Yeah.
What do you think? Which is your favorite there?
No, I don't know. I like all of those. I like the garden tour idea. Actually, my mom does something like that in St. Charles. She puts together a garden tour in Frenchtown where she lives. So I think that's pretty cool. She's got, different, not vendors, but musicians who play at each of the different homes, and you can go and tour and take a little trolley to the homes. So I think it's kind of fun.
Your mom runs a landscape company, does she not?
My mom does run a landscaping company out of St. Louis. Yeah. So, we are wrapping up here on time, so we don't have any more questions here in the comments that I can see. But I love that everybody joined us today. Apologies for the technical difficulties, but I'm glad everybody made it to the right location. Jeffrey, I know you have some really high impact peer groups that you have going on, and I've seen. So since we're off of the Summer Growth Summit, how can people get involved with you? How can they stay in touch?
So we run a high impact peer group community. We have over $500 million in revenue under our umbrella. And it's probably grown since I even counted that, of companies in the US and Canada. We change businesses, and really we change lives. And if you've listened to any of my podcasts, we share clients, Kelly, right?
We share a lot of clients, and a lot of them have let me know that one of the biggest things is like they've gained free time. So instead of just being in the weeds of their business, they can actually take vacations. They have their second in commands who can run the show when they're not necessarily there. And I know that that's been a big game changer for them.
I just recorded a podcast with Craig Atkinson, Green Side Up. He's taking 2-month-long vacations this year.
Not back to back, right?
Well, that would be a 2-month-long vacation.
Okay.
No, 2-month-long sabbaticals in his business.
That's awesome.
And it's all possible. You just have to set the goal and go after the goal. And that's what we help people do. So we have peer groups for all different size companies. Some are more commercially focused, some are more residentially focused. You can go to my website, jeffreyscott.biz. You go to the services page, and then there's a little inquiry form you can fill in on the peer groups. It's our passion We have a team of people to to lead these groups, and we really give tools and benchmarking and confidence and a peer network that will allow you to, it's lonely at the top, it's lonely running a business. We bring you out of the desert and into the community where you get the friendship, the ideas, and the sounding board that, and the goals and the direction to really achieve your dreams that maybe before you either didn't think were possible, or maybe you didn't even dare dream because you weren't sure how you could get there.
That's awesome. If somebody doesn't know what to expect, like, are you hand selecting them into you have so many peer groups, so there's a lot of different options for you to put them in, or is it just you go into the next one? How does that work?
That's a great question. So if one person calls